That's it from the side, ref.
Welcome back to In From The Side, our second show of the week. We're doing a double whammy.
Take two.
Take two. We want to talk about the issues surrounding the Investec Champions Cup, the fact that South African sides are sending B teams to the competition, which isn't something new because the Bulls did it against Northampton last season.
As a necessity.
As a necessity, which we totally understand, but it's, it makes it very difficult as a fan. And we want to talk about the scheduling, so we're going to dig into that a little bit more.
Yeah.
Matt, let's delve into this topic around the Champions Cup, because last week we were interviewed at the Bulls Saracens games by the Good, the Bad, and the Rugby. And the one thing that we were asked is, what makes the competition great? And I foolishly said, I think now it was foolishly, I said, the inclusion of South African sides, because we just make this competition better. A week later, we sent 2 B teams to the UK, both get thumped, and now I feel like an idiot, because now the debate is, well, do we make this competition better? And we had a chat to Ed at halftime, which we just met randomly in the stands, and he said exactly the same thing when we asked him. He said, it's great having South African sides in the competition because theoretically it'll improve the standard of the competition, but then you send a B side.
Yeah.
So,
which then devalues it.
Immediately you devalue it because you don't take it as seriously.
Yeah.
So what do we do? How do we solve this problem?
Well, across the board, everyone says it's a logistics issue, it's a scheduling issue. And if that's the case, well, then all administrations need to get together and put together a structure or a framework that works for all teams. Because again, I understand that you're playing against multiple formats and in different locations and there's travel involved. I hear that there is an issue also with the flights. It's not direct, they have to go via, and so that makes, again, a time issue. Look, at the end of the day, whoever is organizing these tournaments, is trying to put on a spectacle for the spectators. You're trying to drive, crowd and spectator performance, or not so much performance, but attendance. And I feel really sorry for the Sharks fans. I'm a Sharks fan, but the Sharks fan that came to the game this weekend, we interviewed 1 or 2 of them. One in particular, Sean, and his lighty Lockie. I think Lockie must have been 5 years old.
Yeah.
Fully decked out in Sharks kits, coming to see his team play
For the first time.
For the first time, and then just sees a real nothing type game where his team gets a clapping. So it's disappointing, and it needs to be sorted out.
It needs to be sorted out, but I don't know how to resolve it. The only way to resolve it, really, and I sat today. I didn't do a lot of work. So I sat today and really looked at all the competitions globally and where their windows fall in, right? And South Africa's problem is we play our provincial rugby in the Northern Hemisphere, but our international season coincides with the rugby champs playing the All Blacks, playing Australia in the middle of the year, which means we now play rugby for 12 months of the year. And somewhere in between, we still need to squeeze the Currie Cup in, which as supporters, we always place a lot of value on. If you look at the Currie Cup semi-finals and finals, there were more people at Ellis Park watching the final against the Sharks in rain than there were in any of the Champions Cup games that was played in South Africa. Like Loftus was empty.
Loftus was empty, mate.
So I think there's a PR issue. Number one is, how do you sell the inclusion of South African teams to folks in France who I know for a fact they don't like us in the competition. They don't think it's a European championship because South Africans are now playing in it, and they've got a valid point. So do the English. But also, how do you create that positive PR around the competition with South African supporters? Because we don't seem to care about it that much. We care more about the URC. We care more about something very traditional like the Currie Cup. And I think if you ask a lot of South Africans, would you want to see us back in Super Rugby? More than 50% would probably say yes.
So again, is it because the Super Rugby is seen as the kind of premier standard of provincial rugby tournament versus this as being, at least in the eyes of the South African public, a lower grade outing, and therefore, there's not a lot of weight behind the win or loss. You said it, not many Bulls fans caring if they win or lose. I'm sure people care, especially when it's a hard loss. Sharks fan, it's a tough loss. Stormers fan, it's a tough loss this weekend. You never want to see your team get pumped like they did. But if your team's administration, the coaching staff and facilities are not putting a lot of emphasis around, these wins or these games in particular, then how can we as supporters?
Yeah, no, absolutely. But again, there's no right or wrong, because if you listen to the coaches, I don't think John Dobson and John Plumtree had any choice. They had to send a B team, because you fly up 12 hours, or it's not even a direct flight. You have to fly via Zurich, then come to the UK. The Sharks only landed on Wednesday. You've got one practice, and then you play one of the top sides in England. That's at the top of the table. I mean, it's an unfair ask. So
who's making the decision to include us in these competitions in the first place? And because the idea is, if you're in the competition, you should be in it to win it, right?
I agree.
Yeah, from the outset. And if you're not in it to win it, then why are you in it in the first place?
Well, I mean, that now you're opening up another debate, because there is an opportunity for us. And I'm a South African fan. I love seeing the South African sides in the Champions Cup.
So do I.
But we can compete in the URC and not compete in the Champions Cup.
And yet I would argue, and you argued the point before because you said as much, and there was Ed who said the same on Saturday, that's not true. There are some good South African teams that can go all the way in the Investec European Cup, but not if we field second string sides. Like, we have to field our best players, our best team on the day, in order to get the wins, in order to qualify for the knockout stages and go all the way. But if we don't do that, then what's the point? Like, why are we in this? I just don't get it.
No, neither do I. But again, you've got to pick your battles, because next week the Bulls are playing the Sharks. Mm-hmm. Last game just before Christmas. It's going to be huge. I promise you, Kings Park's going to be a sellout.
Sure. Local
derby, two arch rivals. We'll watch the game together, I'm sure. That's way more important for the Bulls than playing Northampton. It's like, and I think it's because South Africans don't understand the tradition. We live in England. We speak to local fans. For them, the Champions Cup's the pinnacle. It's like winning the Champions League in football. It's exactly the same to them. They would pick that over winning their English Premiership. That's more important. And we just haven't got that emotional attachment to that competition. Super Rugby, we had to build that over 25 years of playing in the competition. I had, quickly, this story, I said this to you on Saturday. 1993, Transvaal win the very first Super 10 against the very, very strong Auckland side.
Yeah.
Sean Fitzpatrick, Grant Fox, Michael Jones, everyone in that side.
Team.
Good team, and the Lions win at Ellis Park. And afterwards, Francois Pienaar gets the trophy, and I think this ended in like April, in this small tournament. And Francois Pienaar does an interview, and he says, it was a good win for us. It was good preparation for the Currie Cup.
Yeah.
And that was the mentality back in the day. It's like it was all about our local domestic. And I know it was the amateur days and we didn't play against international competition, but that was the mindset. It's like we've got a local competition that is valued more. So even, from the beginning, Super Rugby wasn't valued that much. We had to build that value, and it took us 12 years to win the bloody thing. So it might take us 12 years to be really competitive in the Champions Cup. I don't know. It's difficult. We're very loyal supporters, South Africans, and now we jump between competitions, and you've got no emotional attachment to a competition. It's like, how do you get my buy-in?
But you say that we're very loyal supporters, and we are. But I feel for people like Sean and Lockie and other people who went out to watch the game at Leicester. We were very graciously gifted 2 tickets to come and watch the game. But there's a cost of living crisis here in the UK and pretty much globally. But here in the UK, it's expensive to go and watch games, especially if you're taking people out, your kids, your wife, maybe a whole bunch of you together. You go out on these days and you want to see, especially if South African living here, you want to see your team, the best players in your team pitch up. And when a second string side comes out, the cost to get to and from the stadium tickets, maybe the pies and cokes, was £3.50 for a Coke.
Yeah,
that's not cheap. It's not cheap.
Oh, no.
7-8 quid for a pint. I think a pie was 7 quid. You're looking at a couple of £100 on the day if you're a family man.
Yeah,
and it's an expensive outing. And if you if you've invested in this, you've seen the fixture list, the tickets, sell out typically quite early. You buy the ticket early, and then your team doesn't pitch up on the day. Well, I would just think to myself, I'll just watch them on TV. So what's the point in watching them live? So they run the risk of doing that. If they do that often enough, of disenfranchising their international fans, we just won't pitch up.
Yeah, but they need to sort out the schedule and the traveling, because I think, the one thing that we always said about Super Rugby is, we've got to travel 4 or 5 weeks to New Zealand and Australia. You play 2 games in Australia, 3 in New Zealand, or, sometimes you only have 4 weeks on tour. Now we want that, because we're in the same time zone as the UK, we just fly up and down every single week.
Yeah.
Like you fly up for one game, fly down. Next week it's the URC. You go back to Wales. You go and play the Ospreys there. Then you fly back for a home game.
Yeah, it's bollocks.
I mean that just adds to it, right? And I know it's not across time zones, so you don't have any jet lag. But still, it takes 2 days out of your schedule where you can prep yourself. Where the other side playing at home has that time to prep, and I just don't think the schedule. If they lumped a URC game in with an away game in the Champions Cup, at least then you can pick your squad and you're there for 2 weeks and you can settle and you can prep and you've got 2 games that you can play. But this flying in and out for one game for something as important as the Champions Cup just doesn't work.
It's bollocks, and they need to sort it out, and we as fans need them to sort it out as soon as possible.
Okay, I'm going to climb off my high horse now. One last thing that we need to look at is a global season. And when I say we, the powers that be, I have no say in it. But there is potential to move everything to an international window. There's one big blocker. It's the top 14. Because if you look at all the domestic leagues, the URC, the English Premiership, Japan League One, where a lot of the top players are playing, the top 14 is too big. They've got 14 sides that play each team home and away. They play 26 league games, where all the other sides play 17, 18, 19 league games. So they take up like a month extra in the window. And then you try to fit the Champions Cup in between. So somewhere there's got to be a compromise. And somewhere someone that's, they're very traditional in the UK has got to talk to the Six Nations and say, you've got to move your window from February and March and let that overlap with the Rugby Championship. Now, that makes sense as a spectator.
Sure.
Play rugby in the summer. How great would it be to see France play Ireland in Dublin in beautiful sunshine weather as opposed to rainy, cold, mucky weather in February, you know? But again, you're up against traditionalists that don't want to touch the schedule, and it's just too many cooks spoil the pot, and you're not going to please everyone.
And if World Rugby could pull their finger out of their arse and actually sort themselves out and stop spending time focusing on, coach of the year and trying to please everyone in the process. Again, another little gripe that we need to revisit on an often basis. If they could just look at it, global rugby as a whole, scheduling, fixtures, where it applies, because we all want to watch rugby every weekend. We're all fans of rugby. We want to see the best players competing at the top level, whether that be international or whether that be cup competitions. But if you're not getting involved to create a format and a structure that allows for players to play often, but without getting injured, because it is a long season. They are professionals, but this is their job. They need time at home. They need time to relax and recover. And you want to see them playing at their best for as long as they can in their career. You don't want to create a system of burnout. You got to have people focused on this and finding the time and putting a system in place. But it doesn't seem to be their priority.
No, it doesn't. But we'll have to see what Brett Robinson does. He's the new chairman of World Rugby. Bill Beaumont is out. Thank God.
Bye, Bill.
So yeah, an Aussie running the show, and obviously they've got the Lions coming up, and their rugby is reinvigorated. So we'll have to see what Brett Robinson says. But good luck to whoever is trying to sort out the schedule, because it's a nightmare.
Yeah, Mr. Data, my man here works in data. Spent all day today and he struggled. So if any one of you, any of our watchers out there are data scientists, machine learning or AI engineers, you've got some algorithm working on the background there that you can put together a scheduling assistant that can help World Rugby, please let us know. Because we all want to watch the best players in the world, whether that be in our TVs or on our TVs or in the stadiums. We don't want people being left at home, and we don't want the idea that coaches are not giving the cups or the competitions that they're playing in, the respect and the value that they need, because we want to see this week in and week out.
I mean, it's very hypothetical, Matt. I'm going to wrap up now. But if there's some compromises, if you cut the round of 16 in the Champions Cup and the Challenge Cup, you take the quarterfinals out of the URC, which doesn't mean anything really. You need semis and a final. And you tweak a little bit with the French top 14 season. Then you can run all of the domestic seasons from February to May, finish on the same day, a final, and you've got final weekend in the top 14, the English Premiership, the URC, the finals all played in one weekend. You give a week break to all the players to reconvene. You do your June tour, where all the Northern Hemisphere teams go to South Africa, Australia, Argentina, New Zealand. You can do that for a month, and then you have a week break, and then you do the Rugby Champs and the Six Nations in August, which I think will actually be very nice for people in the UK. You run that over August, and then September is Champions Cup, November, end of year tour, and then all the players get a 3-month break. So it's very hypothetical.
My man, you are the algorithm. You're the algorithm.
It can be done. I'm just saying. It needs some thought, and it needs people to come to the board and say,
"You're Neo."
He is the one.
We're just seeing numbers and shit, bro.
He's the one.
But no, it's doable. It's doable, but it's going to take compromise, and I think that's where we're stuck. There's egos and people with traditions that's just going to say, nope, we're not going to budge. And I think the French, they're going to be the most difficult to win over.
Because they are often so appeasing, and they always come to the party and help out whenever they can. So look, again, there's problems across the board. Let's get it sorted. Let's see the best teams play week in, week out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're going to finish this year with a bang. The Bulls and the Sharks are playing on Saturday, Matt.
Your team, my team.
Yeah, while it's still civil in this house, let's give a quick cheers to the Bulls and the Sharks.
82 legends.
I hate to admit it, but I think the Bulls are in trouble. Because I know Eben and Sia and Andre Esterhuizen and everyone will be back.
Yeah, they've had a week off.
So
they've been on the West Coast.
Yeah, no, they're having a jaw and they're well rested. But it's going to be a great day. So that's the show for today. Thanks everyone for joining. If you like this show, if you like this content, give us a like, give us a subscribe. Follow us on Facebook, follow us on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. We're on all the social medias. We thank you for your support. This channel is growing and the show is growing slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely.
Slowly but surely. But we are getting there.
Merry
Matthew?
Christmas. Merry Christmas to those. Yeah. Happy holidays, and thanks, buddy. It was a good show.
It was a good show. Thanks,
Cheers,
man.
y'all.
Cheers.